On an island, a wooden barrel was unexpectedly left behind on the beach, and inside it was a girl. She had been abandoned on this deserted island by a man named Salmon. According to Salmon, the girl left on the island was none other than Princess Hikaze, the strongest witch of her clan. However, since there was nothing on the island for her to utilize her magic, she would be no different from an ordinary girl and would soon perish there. But Hikaze was determined not to give up. First, she needed to find something to eat. Now, we meet Shino, the main character of the story. He was an ordinary student, though quite noticeable at school. However, the girls all knew he already had a girlfriend, so they never actively approached him. Everyone also knew that Shino had a close friend named Hiro, but Hiro had not come to school for many days, prompting the teacher to ask Shino if he knew where Hiro was. Shino wasn't sure, but he knew that if Hiro wasn't dead, he was probably somewhere out there. On his way home, Shino was mugged by 5 delinquents who took his wallet. Alone, he couldn't fight off 5 of them, but back when Hiro was around, the 2 of them together could take down 15. Hiro's younger sister had warned Shino many times not to get involved in her brother's fights. She believed that because Shino had saved Hiro from trouble so many times, Hiro continued getting into fights. Later, Shino visited Hiro's family grave, hoping to meet him there, but instead, he unexpectedly encountered a woman. She introduced herself as Yamamoto and asked about his relationship with Hiro. She then stepped forward and pulled out a gun to threaten Shino. She revealed that in the past 2 weeks, a teenager had been spotted in 2 quarantined areas, and this teenager had saved a girl. When asked, he gave his name as Hiro. Shino couldn't believe that Hiro was the type to help others, but when he learned that the girl Hiro saved was only 15, he understood why. Hiro had once cherished his younger sister, Eika, so when he met someone similar, he couldn't ignore it. The reason for saying once cherished was because Eika now rested beneath this very grave. Not long ago, a thief broke into Hiro's house, and Eika became the victim. Hiro was furious that after 10 months, the police still had no leads on the killer. Hiro also believed that Shino's indifference was because Eika had never been fond of him, but Hiro himself was different. He was determined to find the killer and punish him personally. Seeing that Shino knew nothing, Yamamoto intended to eliminate him. But suddenly, a swarm of butterflies appeared, even though butterflies shouldn't be able to survive in the snowy season. Taking advantage of the distraction, Shino knocked the gun out of Yamamoto's hand. However, she had another gun in her bag. At that moment, Hiro suddenly appeared and kicked Yamamoto in the face to save Shino. Shocked, Yamamoto quickly retrieved her gun and attempted to shoot Hiro, but he had a protective barrier that deflected the bullets. She realized that Hiro had encountered a witch and gained magical powers. Hiro knew Yamamoto worked for the government and that she wanted to extract information from him, but he rushed forward, blocking all of her bullets and easily knocking her out. Hiro knew Shino had many questions, but for now, he told him to stay quiet. Hiro revealed that this city was beyond saving. Shino then noticed a person frozen in the middle of the street, gradually turning into a metallic statue. Hiro explained that this was the black iron disease, a supernatural phenomenon that transformed all life into metal. This had already happened in 3 places, and the government had tried to cover it up, but it was futile. Shino would be safe because when the disease peaked, he had been near Hiro, allowing Hiro's magic to protect him. This disease originated from a clan that sought to use magic for a foolish ambition. To obtain immense power, they had attempted to awaken something forbidden. The black iron disease was only the beginning. Once that thing was fully awakened, the entire world would be turned upside down. The only one capable of stopping this disaster was the witch Hikaze, whom we met at the beginning. Hiro had met Hikaze and decided to act on her behalf to prevent this catastrophe. The 2 of them made a pact. Hiro would fight in Hikaze's place, while she would find the culprit who murdered Eika. The butterflies served as a guide, showing Hiro where to go next. A month ago, Hiro had found a glass bottle containing this wooden doll. Hikaze had sent it to the mainland with a message, and Hiro had been the one to accept her pact. Hikaze could still survive on the island, and now Hiro would personally hunt down and deal with the one who killed his sister. Hiro also reassured Shino that he had ensured the safety of his parents and girlfriend, so there was no need to worry. What was about to appear in the ocean was part of what they had to deal with. A massive stone with chains wrapped around it emerged from the water. Hiro had always known who Shino's girlfriend was, and he also knew that both Shino and his girlfriend were liars. Despite frequently criticizing and acting like they disliked each other, Shino's girlfriend was, in fact, none other than Hiro's sister, Eika. At that moment, the stone in the ocean awakened and opened a giant eye. Not long ago, Eika had asked Hiro what a first kiss felt like. Hiro thought she was still too young to be concerned with such things. Later, he took Eika to school and asked Shino why Eika, who attended an all-girls school and had little contact with boys, would suddenly be interested in first kisses. Hiro would never allow any guy to lay a hand on his sister, but he had no idea that his best friend was now dating her. Returning to the present, Hiro explained that the eye in the ocean was part of the entity that Hakazi's clan had attempted to summon. These fragments were appearing all over the country, slowly converging on a single location. If they combined, the world would be doomed. Hakazi assured Shino that she would not harm him, but Shino wanted to simplify everything. She was the strongest witch, but her clan had betrayed and imprisoned her on a deserted island. Now, the only magic she could use was communicating through this wooden doll. Saying it out loud made Hakazi sound like a fool, but that was the reality. The two then traveled to where everything began, Hiro's home. Hakazi wanted Hiro to go to the exact spot where the murder had occurred. Once inside, Hakazi asked how many magical artifacts were left. There weren't too many. Hiro explained to Shino that these were enchanted tools left behind by Hakazi. They could activate magic under her command, but their weakness was that they could only be used a limited number of times. According to Hakazi, these tools were their only weapons against Salmon, the one who had exiled her to the island. Hiro then stabbed a dagger into the floor, allowing Hakazi to cast her magic. Afterward, Hiro told Shino to leave soon. He handed Shino 2 artifacts to protect him from the black iron disease, and if necessary, he could use them for teleportation. Hiro believed Shino should stay with his family and girlfriend and stay away if he ever saw a swarm of butterflies. The butterflies would appear when another eye was about to arrive. Reluctantly, Shino left. He knew that Hiro had no intention of saving the world, he only wanted revenge for his sister. If it was for revenge, Hiro would be willing to destroy the world itself. Shino was convinced he should no longer be involved with Hiro. Shino returned home to pack his things for his journey, but he still couldn't contact his parents. Meanwhile, Yamamoto noticed that Shino had just left his house. As for Hiro, he was thrilled that the moment he had waited for over a year had finally arrived. On his way, Shino came across the corpses of the delinquents who had stolen his wallet. He took back his wallet but was suddenly subdued by Yamamoto. She accused him of being despicable for stealing from the dead. She then demanded that he reveal Hakazi's location. However, Shino touched one of Hakazi's artifacts and teleported away, forcing Yamamoto to release him. He then teleported back to retrieve his belongings. He ran to his school to hide, but Yamamoto unexpectedly tracked him down and fired her gun. Shino used his phone to check Yamamoto's position, but by doing so, he unintentionally revealed his own location. Meanwhile, Hiro still hadn't found any leads, and Hakazi couldn't understand why. Hiro did not intend to blame Hakazi. Suddenly, he encountered a man in front of him. This person asked why Hiro was still here, and Hiro, in turn, asked if he was one of Salmon's hounds. The man immediately lunged at him, but Hiro teleported onto a traffic light. The man realized that Hiro had obtained magic from Hakazi, and when Hiro mentioned a man wielding a spear, Hakazi identified him as Sumura, an extremely dangerous individual. Despite Hakazi warning Hiro not to fight him, Hiro still charged forward. Meanwhile, Yamamoto had entered the school and released toxic gas throughout the area to force Shino out. She then made her way to the rooftop, where Shino was already waiting behind her. Yamamoto put down her gun, but when Shino approached, she kicked his gun away and attempted to subdue him. However, Shino teleported her into the air, causing both of them to fall. He used a protective spell to help them land safely, and then proposed an alliance with her. Meanwhile, Sumura reported back to Salmon about encountering someone connected to Hakazi. Salmon ordered Sumura to capture Hiro alive. At the same time, Yamamoto warned Shino not to get involved with Hiro, saying that Hiro was just a madman obsessed with avenging his sister. However, Shino vaguely hinted that Hiro's sister was actually his girlfriend. He claimed that his love for Eika was 1,000 times greater than Hiro's feelings for her. Yet he had no intention of seeking revenge because no matter what he did, Eika could never return. Instead, he would search for answers in this increasingly abnormal world. Hiro continued his battle with Samira, but the gap in their skill levels was evident. Left with no other choice, Hiro was forced to escape. He blamed Hikaze for Samira's overwhelming strength, but she reminded him that she had already warned him Samira was a true mage, not someone borrowing magic like Hiro. Just as Hiro managed to flee, Shino unexpectedly found him. Hiro was confused about why Shino was still here, but before he could question further, Samira arrived, forcing Hiro to drag Shino away as they ran. The two temporarily took refuge on the roof of a building. Hikaze advised Hiro to avoid clashing with Samira at this moment, but Hiro argued that if he couldn't even defeat Samira, how could he ever find the one who killed his sister? Hikaze realized she couldn't rely entirely on Hiro because the closer he got to a lead, the more unhinged he became. Shino also urged Hiro to listen to Hikaze, as they couldn't win with just teleportation and protective spells. However, Hiro demonstrated that magic could also be used for healing by showing Shino how his wounds had recovered. Shino asked if Hiro could use offensive magic, to which Hiro responded by breaking off a metal pipe as his answer. He then threw the wooden doll to Shino and requested that Hikaze take 3 minutes to explain magic to him. Hikaze explained that magic had no direct offensive spells because the magic of her clan was designed to protect the world, meaning most spells were defensive or multifunctional. The spear, for instance, was reinforced with defensive magic to enhance its durability and striking speed, making it a viable weapon. To put it simply, hitting a normal person with a piece of armor would still hurt more than using bare hands. However, defense had its limits. If one exerted too much force, the defense would break. To use the power of her clan, she had to form a contract with an ancient tree that had existed since the beginning of time, serving as the guardian deity of her clan. There were 2 conditions for using the tree's power. The first was the voice of a clan member. Shino had been able to use it earlier because Hikaze had enchanted an intermediary object for him. The second condition was a sacrificial contract. They could imbue the tree's power into a modern tool or device, but once the sacrifice was complete, the object would disintegrate into dust. Samira noticed that Hiro was now fighting more seriously. He wondered if it was because Hiro now had an ally supporting him. Samira then sacrificed a nearby car to cast a spell and counterattack Hiro. Meanwhile, Hikaze explained to Shino why she couldn't use magic at the moment on the deserted island. There were no modern objects to sacrifice. The greater the magic, the more significant the sacrificed object's knowledge value had to be. Shino was still trying to grasp everything, while Hiro had already been beaten down. However, just as Samira approached him, Hiro quickly grabbed his weapon, forcing him into close combat. Yet, Samira's defensive magic was still solid, allowing him to repel Hiro. Hikaze urged Shino to assist Hiro immediately, as Samira was the strongest combatant in her clan. Given the current situation, Samira would only grow stronger because he had an abundance of objects to sacrifice for magic, whereas Hiro was limited in that regard. Shino tried to find Hiro, but by then, Hiro's defensive artifacts had already been shattered by Samira. Samira was testing whether Hiro's luck would run out before his stockpile of artifacts did. Hiro escaped into a roadside shop and recalled a time when his sister took care of him while he was sick. Eika had believed that Hiro was someone who wouldn't die easily, and it was those words that kept him fighting. He picked up a gun from a nearby corpse but left his phone behind, preventing Shino from contacting him. Meanwhile, the military had intervened, planning to destroy the entire city to completely quarantine the area. Yamamoto received this information and felt the government was going too far. They proceeded to demolish the bridge leading out of the city. Meanwhile, Shino asked Hikaze whether there was any magic that could revive the dead. She explained that magic was fundamentally meant to uphold the world's natural laws, and resurrection was not among them. When Hiro first learned about magic, he had never asked that question. He must have already understood that something as miraculous as resurrection was impossible. Hikaze noticed that Shino seemed to wish for Eika's revival, and was hiding something. Since she was unaware that Eika had been Shino's girlfriend, she was puzzled. Hiro then lured Samira into a tunnel and began firing at him. But Samira deflected the bullets just as Hiro had done earlier. However, Hiro's real aim was to lure him toward a pool of gasoline so he could ignite it. Meanwhile, Shino found Hiro's phone and came up with a way to locate him. Hiro noticed that Sumire was still unharmed and heard him say that Hiro had no obligation to die here. At that moment, Hiro's blood returned to his body, and Shino suddenly rushed in, tackling Sumire. He quickly grabbed his friend and fled, and just as they exited the tunnel, a military missile collapsed it, cutting off Sumire. Shino saw that a bridge had been destroyed and deduced that this would be the final area to be demolished to seal off the city. However, Hikaze was impressed by Shino's quick, thinking he had managed to use healing magic to track Hiro's blood and had precisely predicted the military's missile launch to escape. Sumire later reported his failure to Salmon. However, Salmon believed that if Hikaze was involved, they would inevitably cross paths with the two boys again. Since they had only been unintentionally dragged into this battle, they would soon start running out of resources. Meanwhile, Shino and Hiro boarded a ship to travel elsewhere. The events in their city had been completely covered up by the government. Shino suggested they focus on preventing the fusion of those ominous eyes and avoid conflict with Salmon's group for now. But Hiro disagreed. He wanted to confront Hikaze's clan because he suspected the culprit was one of them. Even Hikaze had to admit the possibility. Hiro believed this was fate. The two young men then arrived in a remote countryside. Watching the local children reminded them of their past. Though unlike those kids, they had never played innocently, but instead had always caused trouble. Following Hikaze's instructions, they went to a nearby shrine to steal the sacred statues for Hikaze's magic. Suddenly, the sky showed signs of rain, and a swarm of butterflies appeared. Hikaze realized that Salmon was recklessly accelerating the ritual. Shino wanted to warn the surrounding villagers. But naturally, the villagers did not believe him, as the government was also covering up the truth. The eye then appeared on the mountain, and Shino tried to save two children by running toward them and throwing them an enchanted ring. However, he was too late, so he could only leave an umbrella for the two statues. The two then took shelter in a local house. Hiro acted as if it were his own home and went straight in to take a bath, while Shino looked for ingredients to cook a meal. Hikaze asked how long they had known each other, and Shino explained that they had been acquainted since elementary school. Hiro's father was a powerful figure in the city, so both the school and the students avoided Hiro for fear of offending his father. However, it was Hiro's hot-headed and impulsive nature that made Shino want to stay away from him in the first place. In the third grade, a motorcycle thief fleeing from the police accidentally crashed into Hiro on the street. The next day, the teacher asked if anyone wanted to visit Hiro, but no one volunteered. So, the teacher made the student on cleaning duty that day go along, and unfortunately, that student was Shino. While the teacher stepped out to get something for Hiro to drink, Hiro started a conversation with Shino, asking him for a favor. Hiro wanted Shino to investigate the culprit behind his accident and gather information about him. He believed the perpetrator had deliberately tried to kill him rather than it being a simple accident. Hiro thought Shino was like him, friendless and always alone. He couldn't rely on his father because his suspicions lacked evidence, and adults would avoid extra trouble and ignore the matter. Shino knew that once he got involved, he couldn't back out, so he decided to help Hiro with the investigation. Before long, Shino uncovered the identity of the culprit and also identified a suspected mastermind behind the incident. That person was Hiro's former chauffeur, who had driven him to school for several years but had recently been fired by Hiro's father. Only he could have provided the exact route for the perpetrator to locate and target Hiro. Otherwise, an outsider would have had to follow Hiro, but since Hiro was sensitive to being tailed, it was more likely that the mastermind already had detailed knowledge about him. Shino had initially intended to help Hiro quickly, so he could free himself from him. But their teacher believed that by keeping Shino around, he could prevent Hiro from acting recklessly and make him easier to manage. And so, whether he liked it or not, Shino became stuck with Hiro. Shino believed that Hiro was not hated by those around him, but rather admired. However, this admiration made people hesitant to approach Hiro, fearing they might upset him. Only Shino dared to cross that line, which was why their bond had grown so deep. After finishing his bath, Hiro joined Shino for dinner. As they lay down to sleep, Shino noted how peaceful the place was. He thought about Eika and was about to say something when he realized that Hiro had already fallen asleep. The next morning, Hiro woke up early for a walk. Hikaze asked him about how he had met Shino, and Hiro summed up their entire story with one word: ridiculous. especially the way it ended. Shino had told the teacher that Hiro's accident happened because he had tried to save a puppy. This changed how the class viewed Hiro, possibly as a way for Shino to get back at him for being stuck with him. But Hiro was still happy because, thanks to Shino, he had made it this far. Before long, Salmon began gathering intelligence and realized that the two boys would soon pinpoint his location and the site of the ritual just by tracking the movement of the eyes. The eyes were actually the fruits of another ancient tree, and they would return to their source. If the first ancient tree was born to uphold the world's moral order, then the second tree existed to destroy those very morals. Salmon knew that the princess would soon map out a route to guide the two boys to him instead of wasting time searching for her on the deserted island. Hakazi also explained to the two why Salmon had only imprisoned her instead of killing her. He could not fully control the power of the second ancient tree. If the ancient tree were to encounter problems during the unification process and spiral out of control, only Hakazi would be able to handle it. For now, Salmon was not in a hurry to go after the two boys himself, but instead assigned the task to someone else, someone who knew the locations where Hakazi had hidden her talismans. Meanwhile, Shino and Hiro had learned that the Guardian Tree had once defeated the Destruction Tree. The Destruction Tree had been cut down and sealed away, while the Guardian Tree had to fall into a deep sleep to recover. Salmon was now gathering the fruits of the Destruction Tree to prevent the Guardian Tree from reviving first. The two then arrived at an aquarium, where Hakazi had once hidden the talisman. Just as they reached it, however, the agent sent by Salmon unexpectedly found them. The sight of the aquarium reminded Shino of the time he had secretly gone there with Eika. Eika believed that everything in life happened for a reason, and even though she knew Hiro would be furious if he found out about their relationship, she still believed they would have a happy ending. Just as Shino and Hiro retrieved the talisman, Salmon's men caught up to them. Hearing that the pursuer this time had an arrow mark on his face, Hakazi immediately recognized him as Tetsuma. Hakazi demanded that Tetsuma not lay a hand on the two, but he claimed that as long as they obediently followed him, there would be no need for violence. Hakazi then questioned Salmon and the others about their true intentions in preventing the revival of the Guardian Tree. Tetsuma refused to answer, and Hiro, unwilling to go along with them, charged into battle. He was quickly restrained by two of Salmon's subordinates, prompting Shino to break a support pillar, causing a massive fish skeleton to collapse, allowing him to drag Hiro away. As they fled, Shino noticed that the artifact Tetsuma had used resembled a pendant Eika had once intended to give him during their visit to the aquarium. This made him suspect that there was some connection between them. Hiro also wondered why Tetsuma seemed to have a personal grudge against Hakazi. She explained that since she had been granted the greatest power by the Guardian Tree, Tetsuma found it unreasonable and suspected she was hiding something. Shino refused to believe that Hiro meeting Hakazi was fate because that would mean Eika's death was nothing more than an excuse for Hiro to go on and save the world. Hiro then came up with a plan. He asked Shino to lure Tetsuma's men to a specific location, where he had already hidden inside a fish tank. When the enemies arrived, Hiro flooded the area with water, and then used high-voltage wires to threaten them, allowing him and Shino to escape safely. Hakazi stated that their next objective was to retrieve a special talisman she had entrusted to someone she deeply trusted. This person belonged to no faction and simply wanted to stay out of the conflict. Before long, they reached their destination and met Junichiro, who could be considered Hakazi's cousin. The two informed him that they had come to retrieve the talisman Hakazi had given him. Junichiro only asked them to state the password, and once they got it right, he let them in. He quickly retrieved the talisman he had safeguarded for so long, and then casually asked if they wanted to light incense before they left. Neither Hiro nor Shino understood what he meant, so Junichiro showed them Hakazi's memorial altar. He revealed that Salmon had informed him that Hakazi had died beside a wooden crate on the deserted island. To make things worse, Junichiro was certain of this because he had personally examined Hakazi's remains. Upon hearing this, both the two boys and Hakazi herself were utterly confused about what was truly going on. A month ago, Junichiro had heard about Hakazi from Salmon and returned to the clan to investigate. When he confronted Salmon, the latter claimed that he had killed Hakazi. However, Junichiro found it hard to believe, as Hakazi was protected by the Guardian Tree, and killing her would contradict the natural order. But Salmon explained that he had placed her inside a wooden crate and cast her onto a deserted island. meaning that if she had died, it would have been due to an accident, which aligned with the logic of life. The fact that only her skeleton remained led Salmon to conclude that the princess had likely been devoured by wild animals. Hiro questioned how Junichiro could be so sure the skull belonged to Hikaze, to which Junichiro simply replied that it was based on instinct. Junichiro was aware of Salmon's intentions but chose to remain neutral since he lacked any special abilities, making him, for all intents and purposes, just an ordinary person. However, noticing that the two still believed Hikaze was alive, he refrained from drawing any conclusions, as part of him also believed Hikaze was incredibly lucky. His only role at this point was to hand over the talisman, trusting that the two would figure out what to do with it themselves. As they left, Hiro asked Hikaze about Junichiro. She explained that he was a distant relative of the previous clan leader. Since he lost his parents at a young age, her family took him in. Despite lacking magical abilities, he had earned the trust of the clan leader, and that trust had persisted within the clan to this day. But if Junichiro was truly reliable, why did he believe Hikaze was dead? He didn't seem to be lying, so what was the real issue here? Was the skeleton he mentioned really Hikaze's? But since they didn't believe in ghosts, the Hikaze they were speaking to had to be alive. Just then, a swarm of butterflies appeared, followed shortly by the emergence of another eye. As Junichiro assessed the situation, he encountered Samira once again. Meanwhile, due to their proximity to the main protagonists, a bus passenger and the driver managed to survive the ordeal. Hiro then asked Hikaze to let him go find Salmon, and she agreed, knowing that time was running out. Samira tried to persuade Junichiro to side with Salmon, but he refused. He then demonstrated why Salmon valued him despite his lack of supernatural power by swiftly defeating Samira with his bare hands. Junichiro realized that the two boys still hadn't grasped the truth. Hikaze and the Guardian Tree were the real threats to the world, not the Destruction Tree. Hiro and Shino then got off the bus and warned the driver not to return to town. They later took shelter in the forest, where Hiro brought up the fact that Eika had a boyfriend since in recent years, she had been buying chocolates every Valentine's Day. Shino accidentally let slip something suspicious about Eika, but Hiro didn't doubt him at all, believing that Shino simply didn't understand her. Hiro then discovered that the talisman Hikaze had left behind was actually a gun. He couldn't understand why the Guardian Tree would grant power to a weapon, but Hikaze reasoned that since it could only be used once before being destroyed, it essentially reduced the number of weapons in existence. Before they could discuss further, they realized they were surrounded. Their campfire was suddenly blown apart, and they were ambushed and captured by the military. Shino was taken away separately, and it seemed he had made some sort of deal with Yamamoto. Meanwhile, Hiro regained consciousness and immediately set off to find Shino. At the same time, Shino realized that Yamamoto had learned the truth that Hiro and Eika were not actually blood-related. Hiro himself had no idea what his feelings for Eika truly were, though outsiders could see them clearly. Yamamoto then brought Shino to meet someone Takumi, the deputy commander of the Anti-Black Iron Disease Task Force. Takumi explained that the government had established this unit to work alongside Hikaze's clan in maintaining world order. However, now that the clan itself was disrupting that order, he feared that the government would have no choice but to declare war on the witches. Shino then exchanged some magical artifacts to obtain bombs and guns from Yamamoto. He decided to join the military in their attack on the witches' stronghold. After discussing the plan with Takumi, they discovered that Hiro had tracked them down. Since they were staging Shino's kidnapping, the soldiers were forced to fire at Hiro, making him fight back continuously. Takumi then ordered the vehicle to move out, but Hiro stubbornly kept chasing after them. Seeing no other choice, Shino jumped out of the vehicle, pretending he had escaped, so that Hiro would be reassured enough to retreat. When Shino asked why Hiro had come to save him, Hiro simply said it was because of his feelings. There was no particular reason. The two then returned to their campsite to retrieve their belongings, including Hikaze's wooden doll. Shino couldn't understand why Hiro showed no suspicion toward him. Was Hiro truly unaware, or was he simply refusing to acknowledge the truth? Previously, Eika once asked Hiro how he wanted their relationship to change. Hiro didn't have romantic feelings for Eika, nor did he try to act like her older brother, as Eika herself disliked that. In short, Hiro only wanted Eika to refrain from having a boyfriend for the time being. However, at the time he said this, Eika was already dating someone Hiro knew nothing about. Back in the present, Shino and Hiro took shelter in an abandoned bus. Shino hoped that everything would soon come to an end, as revenge was the only thing driving Hiro forward. But what would happen once that revenge was fulfilled? Shino then took out his phone to look at a picture of Eika, reminiscing about a summer a few years ago. He had to go to the library to help Eika with her summer homework. She hinted at wanting to experience her first kiss, which startled Shino. However, Eika said she wanted to experience it somewhere else. That afternoon, Eika told Shino she would be spending the last week of summer vacation at her parents' resort. Later, Hiro unexpectedly invited Shino to the train station, intending to introduce him to some college girls. Hiro thought Shino would never get a girlfriend with his gloomy personality. However, instead of socializing, the two ended up competing fiercely in a dart game, making the college girls find them too childish and leave. Shino was annoyed at Hiro for thinking love was something that could happen just by wanting it. It was a process. Hiro lost interest and went home. Later, Hiro told Eika about what happened, and she showed an uncanny understanding of Shino's personality. She believed that someone like Shino would only match well with a person like Hiro. Eika advised Hiro to cherish Shino, as no matter what happened, Shino would always be by his side. Hiro later asked Shino about certain feelings in love, but Shino could only explain them vaguely. Shino knew Hiro liked Eika, but Hiro himself couldn't realize it. If circumstances had been different, perhaps Hiro and Eika would have ended up together. But if that had happened, Shino would have been the one stuck between them. Not long after, Shino was invited to Hiro's family resort to stay with Hiro and Eika. Hiro assumed Eika had invited Shino just to make him do chores. While Shino indeed had to clean and prepare food for the siblings, he also secretly went out with Eika. The two sneaked away to stargaze and almost shared their first kiss until Hiro interrupted them. They made excuses, saying they were just out to watch the stars. The three then returned home to rest. Hiro warned Shino to stay away from Eika, saying she had many dark schemes. Shino wanted to argue but stopped himself. The next morning, Eika invited Shino to go out. They rode their bikes through a field of sunflowers, but Eika suddenly made Shino fall into the field. She then demanded her first kiss, but just before it happened, she stopped, saying the sunflowers were watching them and that they should save it for another time. Shino later woke up to see that Hiro was fully prepared to set out. Hiro pointed a gun at Shino, startling him, but he was only testing his aim, not intending anything serious. The two then set off to settle their unfinished business. Meanwhile, Salmon noticed that the military had mobilized quickly. He wasn't sure whether it was due to some capable strategist or if it was Hakazi's luck influencing events. But if it was truly luck, he vowed to cut it off himself. At the same time, Shino and Hiro began their operation. Hakazi estimated that the military would take at least a week to break through the barrier, likely running out of ammunition before the battle even began. Thus, Hiro and Shino needed to prepare at least 10 magical artifacts before entering the barrier. The media warned civilians to stay away from the area, claiming it was merely a military exercise. As the clock struck 4 p.m., the military opened fire on the barrier. Salmon ordered adjustments to the barrier, first removing its camouflage ability to strengthen its defenses. However, he soon received an alarming report someone was attempting to infiltrate the barrier. At this moment, the two main characters had used 10 magical artifacts and successfully passed through. However, Hakazi wanted them to stop hiding and proceed directly to the Tree of Destruction. Meanwhile, Tetsumer realized that the military was attacking much more fiercely than expected, and their continuous assault could interfere with the revival of the Tree of Destruction. From now on, I will refer to the Tree of Defense as Tree No 1 and the Tree of Destruction as Tree No 2. Hiro's group soon encountered Salmon. Hakazi asked Hiro to step aside so she could speak with Salmon. She demanded that he surrender, stating that the gun she held contained all of her power. If she fired, the tree would certainly take the hit and spiral out of control, forcing Salmon to personally bring her back. Therefore, if he surrendered now, she would stop. However, Salmon argued that all three of them were mistaken in believing that Tree No 2 would destroy the world. In truth, Tree No 2's role was to save the world from the awakening of Tree No 1. Salmon explained that Tree No 1 had set the rule that if someone attempted to revive Tree No 2 by collecting the eyes, a great catastrophe would occur. It was the awakening of Tree No 1 that would bring destruction, and Tree No 2 was the only thing capable of preventing it. According to Junichiro, the planet only began to exist when Tree No 1 fell into slumber. Tree No 1 always attempted to create a perfect and orderly world based on the moral laws it dictated. But since the current world had yet to meet its standards, it would destroy everything and rebuild from scratch. Once awakened, Tree No 1 would devour civilization and all of humanity. Even the military, at this very moment, had no idea they were trying to destroy the very thing that could save them. Salmon claimed that the only way to prevent annihilation was to resurrect Tree No 2 and have it destroy Tree No 1, forcing it back into slumber. Hikaze argued that she and Salmon had already debated this countless times before. She believed that once Tree No 2 was revived and activated, the ensuing chaos would be the real danger. Salmon, unwilling to gamble on Hikaze's personal judgment, remained determined to revive Tree No 2 at any cost. Shino wavered upon hearing this, but Hiro remained indifferent, focusing only on his revenge. He did not care about what happened to the world afterward. Shino tried to convince Hiro that his decision would determine the fate of the entire world. If Hikaze was right, the world would be safe, but if she was wrong, the apocalypse would occur. However, Hiro remained unconcerned. To him, if the world had always followed its own moral logic, then he would rather see it reset from the beginning because this world had taken Eika away from him. Whether his decision was right or wrong, he simply did not care. Salmon then took a different approach. He asked Hiro if he was truly certain about helping Hikaze, as she might not be able to fulfill Hiro's request. Salmon reminded him that Hikaze was already dead. He then produced the skeleton, claiming that he had retrieved it along with the wooden crate from the island where he had abandoned her. Hikaze, however, questioned his claim if what he said was true. Then who was she right now? Salmon asked her to recall the exact dates she had spent on the island. Hikaze stated that she had only been there for 4 months and provided the corresponding year. However, the year she mentioned was 2 years before Hiro's present time. Salmon concluded that the space on Hikaze's island had undergone time travel, allowing her to communicate with the world 2 years in the future. In other words, the Hikaze standing here had already died on the island. She was merely a person from the past, unaware of this fact. Meanwhile, the military had begun clashing with Samura. Salmon, at this moment, declared that the princess had lost, as she was now nothing more than an illusion of the past. Junichiro confirmed that the skeleton was indeed hers. Over the past 2 years, he had also prepared countermeasures in case Tree No 2 lost control. Salmon then claimed that the island was nothing more than a prison keeping the last vestiges of Hikaze's existence. At the same time, Samura continued his assault, charging toward the military's tanks while fending off their attacks. The military was unable to penetrate his barrier. He rushed forward, closed in on a tank, and used magic to sacrifice it to Tree No 1. Thanks to this, he merely needed to touch the tanks to sacrifice them and further reinforce his defensive magic. Takumi realized that even though he had prior knowledge of the sorcerer's techniques, he still could not counter them easily. Meanwhile, Hiro apologized to Hikaze, saying that he no longer had any reason to cooperate with her. However, he was not willing to give up so easily. Hiro pointed his gun at Salmon, threatening him and declaring that if Hikaze could not fulfill his wish, then Salmon had to do it instead. To Hiro, whether or not this world was worth saving had nothing to do with him. His only concern was revenge. Salmon had not expected to encounter someone as reckless and selfish as Hiro, but he saw that he could still negotiate with him. Salmon asked Hiro what he wanted, to which Hiro replied that he needed to find the person who murdered his sister. Salmon wanted to investigate the crime scene, but Hikaze had already determined that the culprit was someone from her own clan. Salmon had not anticipated this revelation, but upon consideration, he acknowledged that using magic to kill someone outside was forbidden. Therefore, the perpetrator deserved punishment. Salmon then contacted Tetsuma and ordered him to find the culprit. Hiro stated the exact time of the incident. Shino was impressed by Hiro, realizing that even as the world spiraled into chaos, Hiro remained fixated on a single goal. Shino then picked up Hikaze's wooden doll. As he conversed with Hikaze, he recalled a past outing with Eika. Both Shino and Eika used to enjoy quoting lines from Shakespeare's play Hamlet. The tragedy told the story of Hamlet, who suffered countless misfortunes and ultimately met his end at the hands of his lover's brother. Sound familiar? However, Shino thought to himself that he would never fight Hiro. At the time, Shino had grown tired of quoting Hamlet, so Aika had introduced him to another play about a witch on a deserted island, except this story had a happy ending. Shino interpreted this memory as Aika's way of reminding him what he needed to do. Deciding to try and save Hikaze, he asked Hiro to hand over the gun. Hiro refused, so Shino used the stun grenades he had taken from Yamamoto earlier to try and incapacitate Hiro. However, Hiro repeatedly created barriers to prevent Shino from approaching. Salmon, still unclear on what was happening, took this as an opportunity to seize the gun. Shino then let Salmon and Hiro fight while he climbed to a higher vantage point. Meanwhile, Yamamoto personally joined the battle against Sumira. Shino believed that there was a way to save Hikaze from suffering the same tragic fate as Aika. Although Hikaze was now nothing more than a skeleton, he thought he could rescue her from the space-time anomaly on the island 2 years prior. Hiro, however, saw no reason to cooperate with Shino. If he sided with Salmon, the truth behind Aika's murder would soon come to light, meaning he had nothing to gain from helping Hikaze. Shino then revealed to Hiro that he had information about Aika's boyfriend. If Hiro helped him save Hikaze, he would disclose the identity of Aika's lover. Salmon, eager to obtain the gun, was growing impatient, but the prospect of saving Hikaze also intrigued him. Hikaze herself was surprised that a single word boyfriend could completely change the situation. Aika was truly remarkable after all. It was because of her that everything had descended into chaos. Shino then explained his theory. He suspected that rescuing someone from the past space-time was possible because no one would always try to protect Hikaze. If allowing her to die without letting her accomplish anything contradicted its moral laws, then the tree would react. Knowing that she was already dead in the present, the tree must have arranged for her past self to communicate with someone in the future capable of helping her. From the beginning, Salmon had known that Hikaze was already dead in the present, and that the one communicating with Hiro was her past self. If he were truly certain that she could never return, he would not have gone through the trouble of hunting them down. In short, Salmon had been trying to prevent Hikaze from reaching them in the first place, and since he had failed in doing so, his victory was not yet assured. At this moment, Sumira decided to prove to Yamamoto that her temporary charms were no match for his genuine sorcery. The two then engaged in a spear fight, while Takumi could only hope that Yamamoto would stall long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Meanwhile, Shino believed that Salmon had deliberately revealed the truth to buy more time by plunging Hikaze into despair. That way, she wouldn't have enough time to think of a way to stop him from resurrecting Tree No 2. However, Salmon argued that Shino's reasoning only solved half of the problem. It was true that Hikaze was still alive, but how did Shino plan to help her escape from the prison of time? Hiro also wouldn't follow Shino unless he could answer this question. Salmon felt that luck was on his side once again. There was indeed a way to save Hikaze, but he was convinced that Shino wouldn't figure it out. However, Shino proposed that the time prison was merely an illusion. Hikaze had claimed she had been on the island for 4 months, but what if that was only her perception? What if she had actually been kept unconscious for nearly 2 years before being placed on the island? Since there was no way for her to measure time there, she could only rely on her own sense of time. Salmon was so startled by this theory that he dropped his sword. Shino suggested that the skeleton must have been carefully crafted to resemble Hikaze, reinforcing the idea that the time prison was nothing more than a perception rather than a tangible reality. Still, Salmon insisted that the time prison was real, but he had no way to prove it to Hiro. On the other hand, Shino only needed to persuade Hiro to pull the trigger for Hikaze to win. Meanwhile, Yamamoto was starting to lose strength against Sumira, but she had managed to stall long enough for the reinforcements to arrive. Salmon now had to find a way to convince Hiro that the time prison truly existed. Hiro was skeptical of Shino's hypothesis, but if Salmon couldn't provide a satisfying answer, Hiro would side with Shino since it carried fewer risks. Hikaze also sought to make Salmon inadvertently reveal the weakness of the time prison. Salmon, realizing that he needed to prove Hikaze was indeed in the past, noticed a crate nearby. He asked Hikaze if there was a crate near her, and she confirmed that there was. Salmon then instructed her to carve something into the crate. If the present version of the crate also bore the inscription, it would prove that time theory was real. Sure enough, the same inscription appeared on the crate in the present. Salmon was triumphant his theory was correct, and Hiro would side with him. Meanwhile, Yamamoto had been defeated by Sumira, But just as he was about to leave, Junakairo unexpectedly appeared. Hiro was about to switch sides when Hakazi reassured Shino that he shouldn't be discouraged. She was confident that she would soon find a way to escape the time prison. Hiro was nearly convinced by Hakazi and Shino's reasoning. Hakazi believed that Shino had deliberately thrown out absurd theories to make Salmon believe he had won, thereby causing him to inadvertently expose the fact that time magic could be manipulated. As a result, Hiro decided to help Hakazi and Shino figure out how to break the time prison. However, he also gave Salmon an opportunity. If Salmon could bring him the culprit before he found a way to help Hakazi, he would still side with him. Hakazi, now fully confident, believed that the current order of the world was in her favor, and she would undoubtedly win. Shino then asked about the mechanics of Hakazi's voice transmission spell. Specifically, he inquired about the necessity of a pair of objects with identical dimensions to establish a link between them. The more intricate the shape, the stronger the connection. Additionally, these objects had to be linked to the caster's body. Hakazi had used her own blood on the wooden doll for this purpose. Thus, if they could find an object with the same size and shape as something on the island, they could bring Hakazi back. Fortunately, Hiro realized that they already had such an object, Hakazi's skeleton. Salmon was furious because this theory was correct. The skeleton was the key to bringing Hakazi back. Meanwhile, Sumira couldn't understand why Junakairo, who was supposed to be neutral, had chosen to help Hakazi's side. Junakairo simply stated that he was just helping a girl like Yamamoto. He then proceeded to knock Sumira out. Sumira knew that Junakairo was a martial artist who would fight until his opponent was exhausted, so he decided to flee. However, Junakairo intercepted him and swiftly took him down. At this moment, Hakazi realized that she could indeed return using her skeleton. However, Shino was concerned that this could create a time paradox if she transported herself back. Then her skeleton wouldn't remain on the island for Salmon to find 2 years later and bring to the present. But Hiro proposed a solution. Hakazi could gradually transfer only her flesh while leaving the skeleton on the island, thus preserving the timeline and avoiding any paradoxes. However, if she wanted to teleport, she had to cast the spell herself and find a sacrificial object in the present time. Unexpectedly, Salmon asked both Hiro and Shino to listen to him for a moment. Meanwhile, 4 more eyes returned, causing the military forces to suffer severe losses due to the black iron disease. These eyes also released chains that fell, crushing the tanks below. Salmon then admitted that he had actually left a sacrificial object for Hakazi on the island, just in case he needed to bring her back. However, he was still resentful, believing that logic itself was favoring Hakazi too much. More importantly, he claimed that no one had orchestrated events to put Hiro in this exact situation, forcing him to aid Hakazi. This meant that no one was responsible for the death of Hiro's sister, leading him to the predicament of having to help Hakazi now. Since Hiro's sister was murdered after Hakazi had already been exiled to the island, Salmon concluded that no one was Hiro's true target for revenge. Hakazi and Shino had always suspected that Ika's death was connected to Hakazi. But to prevent Hiro from switching sides, Shino argued that it was because Salmon and his allies had exiled Hakazi that no one had been forced to act. Moreover, since the murderer was from their clan, Hiro had even more reason not to trust Salmon. Understanding that Shino was stalling for time, Hakazi quickly searched for a sacrificial object to return. She also promised Hiro that if she made it back, she would atone for everything. Shino insisted that abandoning Hakazi now would be the wrong choice. Meanwhile, Junakairo asked Sumira to heal Yamamoto, but Yamamoto felt no need to express gratitude. In this clan, no one had established a rule forbidding its followers from using its granted power to kill. If anyone violated this rule, no one would strip them of their abilities. Unless forgiven, they would face severe punishment. At this time, Tetsuma had uncovered the identity of the person who killed Eika a year ago. Salmon, however, dismissed the idea that a clan member could have committed the murder. But Hakazi was certain of it. She had cast a magical net to capture the killer, yet no one was caught. This could only mean that no one had pardoned the culprit, deeming their actions justified. As Hakazi continued searching for a sacrificial object, Salmon suddenly received news regarding the murderer. Hiro remarked that both sides had been stalling effectively, but it seemed Salmon's side was faster. He demanded that Salmon bring the killer here, but Tetsuma revealed that the culprit was not a member of their clan. Hiro then turned to Hakazi, Questioning her about this revelation, he couldn't accept that he had come this far only for it to be meaningless. However, Hikaze suspected a second possibility. Someone who could defy Tree No One's rules without being punished. Someone capable of evading the magical net, and who did not serve Tree No One. The person she referred to was the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction. According to Hikaze, her own birth was a sign of Tree No One's impending revival. As a result, she was regarded as the sorcerer representing Tree No One, with full authority to decide when it could be resurrected. To revive Tree No One, she would need to perform certain rituals, and to prevent this from happening, Salmon had exiled her to the island. Salmon believed that Tree No One placing its fate in the hands of a human like Hikaze was an illusion. It only pretended to grant such privileges to ensure their loyalty. However, Hiro didn't care about that. All he wanted to know was whether the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction truly existed. Salmon couldn't say for sure, but if the sorcerer did exist, then that person was likely the one who killed Hiro's sister. However, this statement inadvertently contradicted Salmon's own claims. If the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction had killed Aika, then Tree No One had merely taken advantage of that event to draw Hiro and Hikaze together. In that case, Aika's death had nothing to do with Tree No One, making Salmon an accomplice in accelerating the revival of Tree No 2. Realizing that he had completely lost this battle, Salmon was suddenly interrupted by a military report. Roots had unexpectedly appeared, swallowing everything in their path. Junichiro recognized that Tree No One had partially revived without requiring Hikaze's ritual. Meanwhile, Shino noticed that Hiro still hadn't made his final decision. Hiro suspected that Tree No One might have planted the very idea of the sorcerer's existence in their minds. If Tree No One had truly orchestrated everything, then the only person they could rely on now was Hikaze. Salmon still saw a chance for victory. If Tree No 2 awakened before Hikaze could find a sacrificial object and return, then he could still win. Meanwhile, Hikaze was contemplating whether Tree No One had truly manipulated everything. If it was responsible for Aika's murder and had always ensured Hikaze's good fortune, then by now, it should have helped her find the sacrificial object. Just as she was lost in thought, something suddenly fell from the sky, a missile. Hikaze realized that Tree No One was indeed controlling everything, as there was no way Salmon had left this behind. She began to suspect that Tree No One might have orchestrated Aika's death, but this was not the time to hesitate. She asked Shino to bring the doll closer to her skeleton so she could cast the spell. Whether or not Tree No One was behind everything, she was determined to uncover the truth for Hiro's sake, as he had helped her so much. Hikaze finished the incantation and began transferring her flesh back to her skeleton. Her body reformed, and she fully returned to the present. Shino handed her a coat to wear, and Hikaze stated that she and Salmon needed to hold a meeting to determine the clan's next course of action. Hiro aimed his gun at her, but she promised to find the murderer for him at all costs. If Tree No One truly was the culprit, then he could kill her if he wished. Hiro chose to trust her and asked Shino about Aika's boyfriend. However, news arrived that Tree No One was attacking the barrier. Junichiro explained that since the barrier was made using Tree No One's power, it was easy for the tree to infiltrate it. With no other option, Tree No 2 was now awakening to fight back. According to Tetsuma, Tree No 2 had lost control. Tree No One was quickly severed by Tree No 2's attacks, but it instantly regenerated and tore apart Tree No 2's branches in return. Tree No One then began spreading across the entire world. Hikaze asked about the sacrificial objects for Tree No 2. She wanted to help it fight against Tree No One, as she had no intention of reviving Tree No One at this moment. The world was on the verge of an apocalypse. Hikaze retrieved the gun from Hiro, intending to use its power to suppress both trees. However, at that moment, a massive branch struck down, slashing Shino across his body. A wooden stake then flew toward Hiro, piercing through him. Salmon saw this and concluded that Tree No One was truly a demonic entity. It had used the two boys and was now trying to dispose of them. Hikaze immediately ordered Salmon to heal Hiro while she took care of Shino. They had to save both of them before proceeding to the site of the ritual. Hikaze no longer knew what Tree No One truly wanted from her. Meanwhile, Hiro suddenly saw a vision of himself lying in a pool of blood with a swarm of butterflies clinging to his body. He abruptly woke up and found himself face to face with Aika. The two of them spoke for a while, and Hiro thought everything was just a dream until he suddenly woke up again, this time meeting a younger Shino. It was at this moment that Hiro realized his journey with Shino had been real. Hiro then recalled and summarized his entire journey with Shino, from how it all started to how it ended. That's right, Hiro finally understood that he had died. However, he woke up yet again, this time finding himself in a hospital with Shino by his side. But this was the younger Shino once more. Shino told him that Tree No One had awakened and swallowed the entire world. The global military forces had fought against it, but no one had returned. Within just a few hours of its awakening, countless people had perished. Yet, Shino believed that Tree No One was fixing the world. Wars had ceased, all conflicts had been erased, deserts had turned into lush forests, and polluted areas had been purified. Although Hiro acknowledged that everything seemed peaceful, he still felt that morality had not returned to its natural course. Shino pointed out that Hiro wouldn't be satisfied until he avenged Aka's death. That reminder made Hiro recall why he had sought revenge in the first place. He was transported back to the day he returned home, only to see Aka's corpse sitting in a chair, blood flowing everywhere. The overwhelming sense of helplessness and fury from that moment surged through him once more. Hiro then woke up again, this time finding Salmon in front of him. He was surprised to see the person he disliked most right after regaining consciousness. Salmon informed him that he had been asleep for a month. Although humanity now had to coexist with Tree No One, people still went about their daily lives as usual, making the world feel eerily similar to the dream Hiro had. Hiro asked about Shino's whereabouts, and Salmon revealed that Shino had woken up even earlier than him. However, Salmon then made a shocking request. He asked Hiro to kill Shino for him. Before Hiro could process this, he encountered a new character named Megu, a construction worker who turned out to be the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction, the one Hakazi had mentioned before. Salmon told Hiro he would explain everything later and instructed him to change his clothes. Hiro then learned that Hakazi had been traveling around, observing how the world had changed after the awakening of Tree No One. She had taken Shino with her as her bodyguard. Meanwhile, Salmon took Hiro to meet Yamamoto and Takumi. Neither of them was part of the anti-black iron disease task force anymore. Instead, they had been spreading rumors about the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction. Since they had no proof that such a person truly existed, their goal was psychological warfare to make the sorcerer hesitate before taking any reckless actions. Meanwhile, Megu noticed that many people had started worshipping Tree No One as a god, and rumors of the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction, someone who could return the world to its previous state, had grown stronger. Megu believed that Tree No One had not brought true peace, it was merely ruling over humanity. At the same time, Hakazi and Shino visited Aka's grave. Hakazi wanted to learn more about Aka's boyfriend, but Shino was still unable to reveal anything. The two then wandered through the city where Hiro and Shino had once lived. Shino could tell that Hakazi still felt guilty for what Tree No One had done to the world. However, he reassured her that if she hadn't intervened in time, the consequences might have been even worse. Hakazi admitted that she had underestimated Tree No One's power and feared what would happen if all the trees awakened. Elsewhere, Salmon informed Hiro that Hakazi had developed feelings for Shino. She had grown fond of him because he was the one who had helped her escape when she was in utter despair. Meanwhile, Hakazi finally revealed the purpose of their journey. To Shino, they had to keep an eye on the eyes of the trees to determine when Tree No 2 would show signs of revival. It hadn't been completely swallowed yet. It was still barely clinging to life at the top of Tree No One. Salmon revealed that he wanted to eliminate Shino because, in Hakazi's current state of uncertainty, Shino had the potential to sway her decisions. In other words, any choices Hakazi made regarding the fate of the world would ultimately be influenced by Shino. Meanwhile, Hakazi stepped into a restroom for a moment, leaving Shino outside. There, Shino happened to meet Megu, who was asking for directions. At the same time, Hakazi was thinking about Shino and the fact that he had a girlfriend. She felt somewhat jealous and a little irritated with him. The moment she stepped out, she saw Megu approaching Shino and immediately charged forward, kicking Megu. After clearing up the misunderstanding, Megu explained that he wanted to go to Mount Fuji, where Tree No 2 was currently sealed. However, the area was under tight control, and only a select few had access. Megu stated that he needed to get there because he was the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction. He had acquired this power a year ago, the same time Salmon had awakened Tree No 2. Recently, his powers had grown stronger, and after hearing rumors about the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction, he started to suspect that he was connected to it. Hakazi realized that Megu had little understanding of his own powers and the vast impact they could have on the world. She then revealed her true identity and challenged Megu to a sparring match. At the same time, Salmon insisted that Shino needed to be eliminated because he had a tendency to sacrifice everything if necessary. Salmon feared that this trait would influence Hakazi as well. Hiro asked the group about Shino's girlfriend, but none of them knew who she was. However, they believed she was still alive, which reassured Hiro that Shino wouldn't do anything reckless. Hiro then requested Salmon and Takumi to continue investigating the culprit behind Eka's murder. Yamamoto, on the other hand, had been entrusted by Shino to keep his girlfriend's identity a secret, as Shino didn't want too many people to know about her. Meanwhile, Salmon chose not to disclose the fact that many people suspected Shino of being the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction. Back at the sparring match, Hakazi wanted to test Megu's abilities, so she created a defensive barrier that would counterattack him. Megu quickly realized that Hakazi wasn't trying to fight seriously, she was merely gauging his strength. He believed that if he could prove he could control his power, Hakazi would trust him. After deflecting Hakazi's attack, Megu launched his own offensive, unleashing several saw blades that shattered Hakazi's barrier and severed one of her arms. Horrified, Megu panicked, thinking he had gone too far. However, Hakazi swiftly regenerated her arm and struck Megu down. She concluded that, despite wielding the power of the Tree of Destruction, Megu had a kind heart and no intention of using his abilities to destroy the world. Meanwhile, as Salmon and Takumi were still suspicious that Shino might be the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction and the one responsible for Eika's murder, they were unexpectedly contacted by Shino himself. He reported that he had found the real sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction. Afterward, Hiro and Salmon went out shopping for supplies. Salmon remained skeptical about Shino's claim, suspecting that the true identity of the sorcerer had yet to be confirmed. To be cautious, he wanted to reorganize their plans before verifying the information firsthand. However, he was at least 50% convinced, as the information had been validated by Hakazi. Meanwhile, Hakazi found herself increasingly frustrated with the investigation into Eika's killer. Previously, she had theorized that the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction was likely the culprit, but Megu's kind nature made that theory doubtful. Megu was later taken to meet Yamamoto and Sumura so they could further assess his abilities. During this time, Hiro questioned why Salmon hadn't given up. Despite his carefully constructed plans collapsing, Salmon explained that he would rather give his all and fail than do nothing at all. He preferred to be criticized for failing to change the outcome rather than for never attempting to change it. He then pointed out that his reason for not giving up was the same as Hiro's because Hiro clearly hadn't given up on finding the person who murdered his sister. Sumira was astonished to discover that Megu could wield his powers effortlessly without requiring any sacrifices. Curious about how Megu's abilities would affect living beings, Sumira asked him to demonstrate his magic on a nearby tree branch. The entire branch instantly evaporated, prompting Yamamoto to quickly remove Megu from the scene and instruct him not to use his powers without permission. When they brought Megu to Hiro, Hiro explained the current situation, including Eika's murder case. He then questioned Megu about his whereabouts on the day Eika was killed a year ago. Megu recounted that he had been on a date with his girlfriend at the time. Hiro wanted to meet her to verify Megu's alibi, but Megu regretfully admitted that they had broken up and that she had blocked him. He also refused to provide her contact information, as he didn't want to drag her into this mess. Unwilling to accept this, Hiro decided to test Megu himself. Hiro dragged Megu into a fight, urging him to go all out. He wanted to determine whether Megu was capable of killing someone. If Hiro died, Shino and Hakazi would take care of Megu. If he survived, he would believe in Megu's innocence. To ensure Megu wouldn't intentionally hold back, Hiro provoked him, calling him a coward and suggesting that was the reason his girlfriend left him. He even insinuated that Megu's girlfriend might never have loved him at all and that he had merely been deluding himself. Though furious, Megu found himself unable to attack Hiro. Observing this, Salmon concluded that while Megu possessed great power, his heart was too weak. This only reinforced Salmon's suspicion that Shino might be another sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction. Meanwhile, Shino and Hakazi noticed that, despite the recent upheavals, many people continued to live their lives as usual. Shino likened this to war. No matter how devastating a conflict was, life went on as if nothing had happened. At that moment, Junichiro suddenly appeared and asked Shino to buy some drinks. Understanding that Junichiro wanted to speak with Hikaze privately, Shino agreed and left. Junichiro then got straight to the point, telling Hikaze that she had yet to realize she was in love with Shino back with Megu. Although his control over his abilities had improved, his mindset remained unchanged. Megu expressed his desire to change and save the world, hoping that doing so would allow him to reunite with his ex-girlfriend. Seeing how pathetic this sounded, Hiro mocked him. In retaliation, Megu bluntly called Hiro a siskin. The others immediately reacted, knowing Megu had crossed the line and was about to get beaten up. Hiro quickly denied the accusation, insisting that he and Eika weren't biologically related. However, Megu countered that Hiro's feelings for Eika were clearly those of love. Meanwhile, Hikaze continued to deny her feelings for Shino, arguing that Shino already had a girlfriend. However, as she described Shino and the things she wanted to do with him, Junichiro could easily tell she had fallen for him. With no way to refute it anymore, Hikaze reluctantly accepted the truth. After giving Megu a proper beating, Hiro reiterated that he only saw Eika as his sister and had no romantic feelings for her. At the same time, Salmon discussed a plan with Takumi to gain a clearer understanding of the powers of the two sacred trees. He then called Hikaze to inform her, but she was too preoccupied with her emotions and told him to handle it himself. She reasoned that if things spiraled out of control, she could still seal both trees. Junichiro advised Hikaze to sort out her feelings and stop hesitating over Shino. Since Shino already had a girlfriend, things could take a disastrous turn. In the worst-case scenario, no one might even kill Shino's girlfriend to give Hikaze a chance to be with him. Meanwhile, Yamamoto informed Megu that he would soon have to wear a special outfit and appear before the public as the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction. His role would be to destroy the branches of no one within the city. Hikaze dismissed Junichiro's claim that no one would kill Shino's girlfriend, believing he was exaggerating. But right after that, a live broadcast appeared on television, showing the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction preparing to destroy no one in front of the public. At the announced time, two sorcerers descended from the sky and cast a spell that illuminated the area. From within the light, Megu appeared in a superhero-like outfit. With a single chant and a simple gesture toward the tree, it instantly disintegrated, leaving the gathered citizens in awe. Shino understood that this was just a cleanup operation for the sacred tree, but it seemed unnecessarily extravagant. Hikaze then decided to leave. Outwardly, she claimed she was returning to investigate internal affairs within her clan, but in reality, she just needed time to calm her emotions. Megu returned to Yamamoto, who told him that he could rest for now. However, they still had 2 more branches to eliminate within the country, and Yamamoto planned to make the next event even grander. Once the domestic branches were dealt with, she intended to take Megu overseas for further cleanups. Much to his dismay, he just wanted a break. Meanwhile, Shino and Hikaze returned to the clan's village. Hikaze reunited with the village elders and children, including a particular girl named Sana, whom she cared about. Sana's older brother had recently passed away, but she seemed to have recovered emotionally. Yamamoto had also brought Megu near the village, as they wanted to determine whether Shino or Megu was the true sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction. However, what they sought to examine wasn't their power, but their nature. Around this time, Hikaze overheard rumors about a spy in the village who had been disguising themselves as a ghost to scare people. She asked an elderly man to spread a rumor about the ghost's presence to keep children from wandering around. Instead of resting, Hikaze decided to investigate the matter herself. 2 elderly women in the village teased her, suggesting that she had changed because she had a boyfriend traveling with her. Wanting to deny this, Hikaze sped up her pace, walking ahead of Shino. However, Shino, fearing that the suspension bridge they were crossing might collapse, hesitated to walk too fast. Seeing this, Hikaze instinctively reached out to guide him but quickly withdrew her hand, afraid that her feelings would intensify. Hikaze explained that all information in the village was transmitted orally, meaning that even if the spy infiltrated the village, they wouldn't find any written records. Meanwhile, Yamamoto's group received Hikaze's directive that neither they nor the villagers were to use magic. If the spy realized that the village was just an ordinary settlement, they would likely give up on gathering information. Megu recalled hearing a rumor about a child who had seen a ghost. Shino then asked Hikaze if she believed in ghosts or was afraid of them. She confidently stated that as a sorceress, she neither believed in ghosts nor feared them. However, her thoughts soon drifted to unrelated matters, particularly her feelings. Shino, in turn, reminisced about watching fireworks with Eika. Hikaze observed that Shino was becoming as emotionally detached as Hiro. He didn't deeply engage with things, but merely watched as they passed by in his life. She warned that this mindset might cause him to miss out on important things. Suddenly, news broke that Sana had gone missing. At that moment, Hiro was rereading Hamlet. Sumira was puzzled by Hiro's interest in a story about a man so consumed by revenge that he destroyed himself. Hiro remarked that Hamlet was foolish for believing in something non-existent, like a ghost. He dismissed supernatural beliefs as mere human illusions, fabrications used to cope with unspoken regrets toward the deceased. Sumira later recounted Hiro's words to Yamamoto and Tetsuma, finding it odd that someone who didn't believe in ghosts was so interested in Hamlet. Hiro explained that Eika had liked the play, which was why he looked into it. He also mentioned that Eika had enjoyed another work, The Tempest. Both stories revolved around revenge, but while Hamlet had a tragic ending, The Tempest concluded on a hopeful note. As the group continued their discussion, they suddenly noticed a light near the village. At the same time, the villagers, who were searching for Sana, received shocking news the village shrine was on fire. Tetsuma also wanted to use this opportunity to determine whether Shino was the sorcerer of the Tree of Destruction. It was strange everyone was suspicious of Shino, while the one who actually possessed power was leisurely taking a bath. The villagers then discovered that the missing girl, Sana, was with a man right on top of the burning shrine. Hikaze wanted to find a way to rescue Sana, but Shino pointed out that if she used magic, she would be exposed. However, aside from the elderly and children, there was no one else left in the village. Thus, Shino decided to swing across to the other side using a rope. He understood that Sana had gone to the shrine despite the ghost rumors because she hoped to see her deceased brother one last time. The rope snapped mid-air, but Shino managed to cling to the cliffside. He climbed up, approached the man, and restrained him, allowing Sana to escape. However, the man pulled out a gun and threatened Shino. Suddenly, the shrine collapsed, putting Shino in danger, forcing Hikaze to use her magic to save him. Tetsuma suspected that Shino had deliberately put himself in harm's way so that Hikaze would be compelled to rescue him. The man then tried to escape, prompting Sumira and Tetsuma to block his path and capture him. Shino felt somewhat guilty for making Hikaze use her magic to save him, but she ignored her restraint over her emotions and embraced him. Despite this, Tetsuma still harbored doubts about Shino. The next morning, Yamamoto examined the burnt shrine and reported to Takumi. They realized that the captured spy was backed by a national-level organization. Moreover, Yamamoto had found a clue that could help them understand the power of the two mystical trees. Shortly after, Takumi was summoned by his superiors. They urged him to quickly resolve the issue of the sacred tree and uncover the secret behind its power, as the United Nations had begun interfering. Takumi reassured them that there was no need to rush. He was already very close to unraveling the mystery of the two trees. Meanwhile, Megu continued his tree-clearing duties diligently. Over the past 2 weeks, he, along with Yamamoto and Sumira, had traveled to numerous countries. Yamamoto was enjoying the trip like a vacation, whereas Megu felt the opposite. Shino noted that Megu's group was handling their tasks well, but Hikaze remarked that the situation was unusual. The trees had caused significant trouble, yet now a superhero had appeared to resolve everything, giving the people a newfound sense of hope. However, this also meant that those opposing the sacred tree would soon reveal themselves. Putting work aside, Shino and Hikaze decided to have lunch together. Hikaze found herself flustered. It felt like a date. The more she tried to suppress her feelings, the more ineffective it became. And despite Shino's sharp reasoning skills, he was completely oblivious to her emotions. She wondered if Shino was simply indifferent to everything around him because he already had a girlfriend. But the more she thought about him positively, the deeper she fell in love. Determined to break free from her feelings, Hikaze suddenly asked Shino about his girlfriend. She believed that if Shino's girlfriend was truly outstanding, she would feel inferior and naturally give up on him. Shino then shared a story about Christmas. When he received a gift from Eika, she noticed that he had also received presents from multiple other girls. Although Shino knew Eika was upset, Hakazi realized from the story that Shino's girlfriend must have been quite intelligent. However, Shino described her as someone who simply disliked arguing and had a rather terrible personality. Hakazi pointed out that if that were true, his girlfriend would surely be furious knowing he was traveling with another girl. But Shino reassured her that there was nothing to worry about. Hakazi felt as if he was looking down on her, but Shino quickly clarified he thought she was beautiful and had no issues with her personality. Shino then recalled an incident when Aka told him about a classmate who had wanted to get to know him. To discourage the girl, Aka told her that Shino had a horrible personality, which effectively stopped any further interest. Aka had once said that if Shino ever got close to another girl, the ice crusher she was using wouldn't be crushing ice anymore, it would be crushing Shino instead. Aka believed that Shino was the only one who could tolerate her personality, and she was also the only one willing to date him. Therefore, neither of them needed to let outsiders interfere in their relationship. Shino thought that his relationship with his girlfriend was not based on feelings of love or affection, but rather on the fact that they needed each other. However, the more Hakazi listened to Shino talk, the more she fell for him. At that moment, Takumi met with Tetsuma and informed him that Megu had become too exhausted from clearing the sacred trees and had returned. However, thanks to Megu's efforts, the world had started to view the first sacred tree differently. Now, the only remaining concerns were the second sacred tree and the person who carried the heart of the sorcerer of destruction. The media was in an uproar over the existence of the first sacred tree and the revelation of the sorcerer of destruction. Meanwhile, Hiro had learned that Salmon's group suspected Shino of being the second sorcerer of destruction. Salmon wasn't certain, but he theorized that the sorcerer of destruction might have split their body into two people, one carrying the heart of destruction, the other wielding the power. If Shino was truly the one with the heart of destruction, then he must have hidden it well to deceive everyone, gain Hakazi's trust, and receive the protection of the guardian tree. Their request for Hiro to kill Shino was a precaution in case their theory was correct. However, Hiro didn't want to act hastily. Instead, he suggested that Salmon investigate Shino's girlfriend. Since Shino had never revealed anything about her, she must have had a significant influence on him. If Shino was indeed the sorcerer of destruction, but still had love for his girlfriend, then she would make a perfect hostage to control him. On the other hand, if he was willing to abandon her, then they could simply eliminate Shino without hesitation. They then began identifying potential candidates for Shino's girlfriend. The first possibility was a classmate or someone from his school. However, Hiro recalled that Aka once mentioned how someone had spread rumors about Shino being cruel, meaning his girlfriend must have been someone who knew him well, rather than someone who only heard rumors. Next, they considered why Shino had to hide his girlfriend's identity even from Hiro. Perhaps she had some kind of flaw she didn't want others to know about, or maybe she was significantly older or younger than Shino. Meanwhile, Hakazi and Shino went on a trip to a hot spring. Hakazi noticed that Shino seemed to be texting his girlfriend, so she asked him about it, but he denied it. She couldn't hold back anymore. She finally confessed her feelings to Shino, admitting that she had fallen for him. However, she still had her pride and didn't want to burden others. Thus, she asked Shino to find a way to make her stop liking him. At the same time, Megu started feeling that the group was overcomplicating things when the answer might have been right in front of them all along. Shino, now understanding Hakazi's concerns, reassured her, telling her not to worry after all. How could she harm someone who had already been dead for a year? Shino then revealed the truth to Hakazi. Meanwhile, Megu had come to a startling realization. Shino's girlfriend could be none other than Hiro's sister, Aka. However, Hiro refused to accept this. He couldn't understand why Shino and Aka would need to hide their relationship from him. Megu wanted to say that everyone already knew Hiro was an extreme siskin, but he couldn't bring himself to say it out loud. Hiro argued that Aka had died a year ago, yet Shino's girlfriend was still alive. How could that be possible? However, Shino's claim that his girlfriend was alive was only based on Hiro's subjective assumption. No one had ever actually heard Shino's girlfriend speak. At that moment, Hakazi realized something terrifying. If Shino's girlfriend was Aka, then she herself was responsible for Aka's death. Shino, however, reassured her not to feel too guilty. The matter of Aka's death was still under investigation, and there was no definitive conclusion yet. Moreover, even if the first sacred tree was responsible for Aka's death, Shino did not hate Hakazi. He believed that hatred wouldn't solve anything, no amount of revenge would bring Eika back. The reason he saved Hakazi from the island back then was simply because he didn't want Eika's death to be meaningless, and that meaninglessness to lead to further tragedy. Hiro couldn't believe that Shino could remain so calm after Eika's death, so Megu asked for permission to speak, even though he knew Hiro wouldn't like it. He pointed out that Hiro and Shino were complete opposites. Hiro acted based too much on emotions, while Shino was someone who could remain indifferent to everything, almost emotionless. Both had been unexpectedly dragged into this situation, losing their family and friends because of the sorcerers and the sacred trees. However, they shared one thing in common. They had both lost something irreplaceable, and they would both have to face the pain that came with it. Hakazi then learned that Shino had been suppressing his emotions for so long that he had grown used to it. But she had to ask him, if he kept hiding his emotions, would he ever truly be happy? She told Shino that he should rediscover his feelings and, at the very least, allow himself to express his pain. However, Shino asked her what exactly she expected him to do. Should he tell Hiro that he had been Eika's boyfriend and act even more devastated than Hiro? Should he confess how numb he had felt upon hearing of Eika's death, especially on the day he had planned to spend Christmas with her? Hakazi urged him to stop prioritizing the feelings of others and to think about himself first. Shino was so overwhelmed that he finally poured out everything he had been holding inside and collapsed to his knees in tears. The reason he hadn't shown his emotions wasn't because he couldn't, it was because he knew that no matter how much he grieved, nothing would change. Hiro still refused to accept this truth and walked away, while Megu questioned why no one had figured out that Eika was Shino's girlfriend when it had been so obvious all along. In reality, Salmon had considered the possibility, but he dismissed it because it seemed too illogical. After everything that had happened on the mountain, Eika's death felt like a complete contradiction to all reason. Hakazi, however, swore that if the first sacred tree had caused Shino this much suffering, she would destroy it at any cost. Salmon then instructed Junichiro to keep an eye on both Eika and Shino, fearing that if Hakazi discovered the truth, she would attempt to destroy the tree. Junichiro later met Hakazi and noticed that something had happened between her and Shino. He could feel that Hakazi's feelings for Shino had become even stronger than before. Meanwhile, Yamamoto's group decided to leave Hiro alone, as he needed time to process the truth. She turned her attention to investigating the connection between the two trees and the burnt-down shrine they had found earlier. It was already known that the resurrection of the two trees had caused the black iron disease, a phenomenon science had yet to explain. However, ancient alchemy records mentioned the transformation of matter in a way that resembled the disease. The symbol of alchemy, a dragon devouring its own tail, was a curious parallel to the recent rumors suggesting that the two trees might be ancient snake or dragon deities. These deities were feared as gods of destruction, bringing storms and calamities, yet they were also worshipped for providing water to sustain agriculture. Based on Yamamoto's hypothesis, the first tree wasn't a god that created the world, but rather an extraterrestrial weapon of destruction. However, Tetsuma dismissed this idea as nonsense. Meanwhile, Junichiro informed Salmon that Hakazi had imprisoned him. Earlier, she had spoken about wanting to see how the tree would react if she openly opposed it. If the tree truly favored her above all else, it would still obey her even if she defied it. But if it saw her only as a tool for its own revival, then it was nothing more than a tyrant that needed to be overthrown. At that moment, Megu was continuing his usual task of clearing the sacred trees when Hakazi suddenly appeared to stop him. Hiro, deep in thought, happened to turn on the television and saw a breaking news report. Everyone was confused. Why would Hakazi want to destroy the first tree, yet also prevent Megu from doing the same? As Salmon observed Hakazi and Megu's fight, he realized that Hakazi was deliberately pushing Megu to his limit in order to force him to unleash his full power just before she made her move. Shino and Hakazi devised a plan together, then split up, each going their separate ways. From now on, Hakazi would frequently appear to confront Megu, using real combat as a way to train him further. Meanwhile, Shino discovered that Hiro had begun searching for him. After some time, Hakazi left, allowing Megu to finish his work when she noticed he was already exhausted. She promised to meet him again next time and urged him to become even stronger. In the following days, Hakazi continuously engaged in battles with Megu, while Hiro sought out Shino to directly ask about the truth between him and Eika. Meanwhile, Yamamoto observed that Hakaze's actions had provoked the government into taking a firm stance on destroying the first tree, exactly what Hakaze wanted. Just then, all three of them unexpectedly ran into Hakaze on the street. Hiro began questioning himself if he learned the truth about Eika and Shino. What would he do next? Hakaze had now become aware that Shino was suspected of carrying the heart of the Tree of Destruction. Yamamoto also wanted Hakaze to slow down, as Megu was becoming too exhausted and needed rest. Later, Hakaze asked to hear Yamamoto's hypothesis about the tree, as she suspected it was an extraterrestrial creation implanted on Earth to prevent humanity from evolving. By accepting sacrificial offerings, the tree supposedly assessed the level of civilization's advancement. Hakaze then wondered about the other tree, to which Yamamoto theorized that both were different versions of the same weapon. Though nothing was certain yet, he insisted that the theory remained just that, a theory. While Hakaze respected Yamamoto's hypothesis, she still found it illogical. If the tree was a weapon, why would it allow a being from the very planet it was meant to destroy to control it? Before leaving, Hakaze asked Yamamoto to retrieve her wooden doll and wooden box from the government's possession. At the same time, Shino and Hiro coincidentally encountered each other at a cemetery. Hiro was merely wandering, while Shino had gone out to buy pastries and happened to run into him on his way back. Hiro then suggested that they eat together while discussing two things: Eika's boyfriend and Shino's girlfriend. Shino straightforwardly revealed the truth, and Hiro finally began to accept it. However, he was still shocked to hear that Shino and Eika had shared their first kiss. Shino, now firm in his stance, stated that Eika belonged to him, not Hiro. He then asked Hiro if he didn't want to punch him. But Hiro only wanted to know whether Shino had forced Eika into being his girlfriend. In response, Shino revealed that he had been the one pressured by Eika instead. With that, Hiro had no reason to fight. Eika had made her own choice, and he respected it. In part, Hiro also realized that he had never truly loved Eika. He had never seen her as a sister or a friend, let alone a lover. He admitted to himself that he had never loved Eika the way he thought he did, and thus, he had no right to be angry at Shino. The two then left together, with Hiro now understanding that Shino's efforts were meant to prevent Eika's death from becoming a tragedy. However, Hiro still refused to give up on finding the culprit, and depending on how things unfolded, the two might one day become enemies. Hiro was also surprised by how well Shino had been able to suppress his emotions for so long. But Shino, in turn, knew that Hiro had also been hiding something, not his emotions regarding Eika, but his doubts about Shino, even if just a little. When Salmon heard that the two boys had reconciled, he was quite shocked, as he felt a sense of unease between them. Meanwhile, Hakaze returned with Shino, now openly expressing her feelings for him. Even if it was one-sided, she didn't care. On some level, she saw compensating Shino as a way to take responsibility for her own existence. She also revealed that she had figured out a way to find the culprit. At the same time, Yamamoto offered Megu some advice regarding his purpose in battle. The next morning, Hakaze gathered everyone together. She declared that she now wanted to resolve the long-standing issue, the true culprit behind Eika's murder. Once this was settled, she would release the final eye to revive the second tree and help Megu unlock his full power in order to destroy the first tree. The military eventually located Hakaze's wooden doll and wooden box. With these, she planned to reverse transport herself back to the skeletal remains on the island from 2 years ago, then find a way back to the mainland and arrive at Hiro's house before the murder took place. At the very least, she would discover the identity of Eika's killer. Junakiro questioned why she didn't just save Eika altogether. However, doing so would trigger a time paradox and completely disrupt the present. To be sure, Hakaze first asked Hiro was he willing to risk making the present worse if it meant saving Eika. Hiro told her there was no need for such a gamble. All she had to do was fulfill her role in uncovering the truth behind the murder. Yamamoto then had Takumi arrange and prepare a suitable sacrifice for Hakaze's ritual. Before departing, Hakaze took some time to relax in a massage chair, voicing her inner fears. What if she herself had been the one to kill Eika? Or worse, what if Eika had been murdered for no reason at all, and her killer was already dead? That would mean Eika's death held no meaning whatsoever, and Hakaze couldn't predict how the two boys would react if her suspicions turned out to be true. If it came down to it, she was willing to take responsibility for Eika's death herself, just so the two of them wouldn't feel as if their entire journey had been meaningless. That night, as Hakazi was preparing for her journey, Shino sought her out. He had figured out her backup plan and asked if there was any way to bring Aika to the future, just as they had once rescued Hakazi. However, Hakazi explained that Aika was different from her, and the necessary conditions to make it happen were nearly impossible to meet. Shino had no choice but to accept that Aika was truly gone. He then asked if it wasn't cruel of him to ask a girl to go back in time just to save his romantic rival. Hakazi set off, fully prepared for the possibility that if no one else killed Aika, she herself would have to do it. Aika's death was an absolute certainty, one that had to happen for the present to exist as it did. Even if it meant Shino would hate her, she had accepted the consequences. The next morning, Hakazi touched both the box and the wooden doll, using a missile as the sacrifice for her spell to transport herself back to the island. Once there, she contacted the others via the wooden doll and quickly located the offering that Salmon had left behind. By examining the condition of her clothes, she determined the approximate time period she had arrived in. Hiro confirmed that this was 1 month before Aika's murder. Now that she had a means to return to the mainland, Hakazi was confident she would make it in time. She also informed the others that she had to dispel the magic on the wooden doll since she would be in hiding soon and didn't want their voices to be heard at the wrong moment. Back in the present, Salmon asked Hiro what he would do if Hakazi truly turned out to be Aika's murderer. Hiro declared that he would take revenge, while Shino vowed to stop him at all costs. However, Yamamoto remained skeptical, suggesting another possibility: what if Shino had an alternate personality that he himself wasn't aware of? If that were the case, Hiro stated that he would kill Shino without hesitation. Days passed without any word from Hakazi. Life continued as usual for the others, except for increasing public protests against the destruction of the first tree. Many civilians believed the tree was preserving world peace, and its destruction would only allow war-mongering factions to rise. Meanwhile, Hakazi finally arrived in the town where Hiro and Shino lived. With 4 hours left before Aika's murder, she needed something to do to pass the time. Unexpectedly, she ran into Aika. Aika quickly noticed Hakazi staring at her and, sensing something unusual, Hakazi made an excuse and left. She ran into an alleyway, performed a spell, and flew up to the rooftops. As she spoke to herself about Aika, she was suddenly caught off guard. Aika had appeared right behind her. Surprised to encounter someone who could use magic and knew Shino, Aika nonchalantly revealed the truth: she was the Witch of the Tree of Destruction. Meanwhile, back in the present, the Navy made a shocking discovery: a massive tree trunk had surfaced in the middle of the ocean, seemingly connected to the first tree. Back in the past, Aika showed no intention of fighting. Instead, she sat down with Hakazi for a conversation. Hakazi decided to tell Aika in advance about the tragedy that was about to unfold. Yet, for some reason, Aika showed no fear of death. Aika admitted that she did feel some regret about dying, but what concerned her more was what would happen afterward. She revealed that in 10 years, if the first tree was not destroyed, it would wipe out human civilization entirely. At the same time, Yamamoto suspected that the massive tree trunk in the ocean was the heart of the first tree, and that only by destroying it could they annihilate the entire tree. Aika then explained further the first tree had always been the true destroyer, while the second tree was a sword created to eliminate it. Originally, she had planned to inform Hakazi's clan about this if they ever attempted to revive the first tree. However, if her death could accelerate its destruction, then she was willing to accept it. Hakazi asked about Megu, and Aika revealed that Megu was a backup witch. Megu possessed a human body, but would inherit the power of the second tree. At a predetermined time, that power would naturally transfer to her. However, with Aika's death, Megu would be forced to inherit the power earlier than expected. Meanwhile, Yamamoto speculated that the first tree may have tested humanity multiple times before. And because humanity had always failed, this time, it had granted them magic to see if they could succeed in fighting back. In other words, the first tree was created to be destroyed. At that moment, Aika fully understood everything that needed to be done. The final question was who would be the one to kill her now that she had awakened her powers. After careful consideration, Aika decided that she herself would be both the murderer and the victim. By hiding all her belongings, she would make it look like a robbery, and by using her own power to end her life, Hakazi's magic would be unable to detect the cause of death. Hakazi couldn't comprehend why Aika had to take her own life. Aika believed that her death was what led Hakazi to meet Hiro and Shino, which, in turn, gave her the motivation to destroy the first tree. Her mission was to eliminate the first tree, and if her death could pave the way for that, she was willing to make the sacrifice. Hikaze was still shaken by all of this, but Eika only asked her to relay a message to Shino and Hiro that she had chosen this herself and would take full responsibility for it. Hikaze bore no guilt. However, Hikaze argued that Shino and Hiro had both risen up because of Eika's death. If they learned the truth, they would lose their resolve, and everything would become a tragedy. Eika, however, believed they would understand. But when Hikaze mentioned that Shino had cried because of Eika, Eika immediately punched her. She was angry that Hikaze had made Shino cry, someone who rarely ever shed tears in front of others. Hikaze fought back, determined not to let Eika return to the mansion and die there. Eika then asked if Hikaze knew why her clan couldn't use offensive magic. The primary reason was to prevent them from becoming tyrants who ruled over others. The second reason was to ensure they could never defeat the destructive power of the Witch of Annihilation. Hikaze, disregarding the consequences, resolved to stop Eika at any cost. Eika, in response, effortlessly sliced through Hikaze's shield like tendrils. She had gained this power long ago, and had always been able to see through the truth of the world, something that made others view her as an outcast. Only Shino and Hiro had ever treated her like a normal person. Eika refused to let Hikaze alter reality. She feared that any change could not only lead to the world's destruction, but also cause Hiro and Shino to lose their lives. She then launched an attack, slamming into Hikaze's barrier. Eika revealed that the power of the second tree originated from the first tree itself. The more Hikaze used her magic, the stronger Eika became. Eventually, Eika shattered Hikaze's barrier and knocked her unconscious. She then left, continuing toward her fate. When Hikaze regained consciousness, she still believed she could make it in time. She rushed to the mansion to stop Eika. But when she arrived, Eika was already dead. Beside Eika's lifeless body, Hikaze found a letter. Eika had entrusted her with a message for Shino and Hiro, to be delivered only after the first tree was completely destroyed. Though heartbroken, Hikaze knew she had to fulfill Eika's final wish. Hikaze later wept at what would become Eika's grave before heading to the crime scene, the next morning to face Hiro and Shino. Shortly after, the government officially declared a ban on the destruction of the first tree to appease the public. Takumi tried to oppose the decision, but his influence had significantly waned. Meanwhile, Hikaze had returned, and together with Salmon, she retrieved Eika's letter and message to deliver to Hiro and Shino. She revealed the truth to them. Hiro, upon seeing the handwriting, immediately recognized it as Eika's. He accepted the reality and did not blame Hikaze. However, Hikaze still believed that if she had never returned and told Eika about everything, Eika might still be alive. Hiro told her to stop blaming herself, reminding her that it was he who had forced her to go back in time. Eika's death was ultimately Eika's own responsibility, and Hikaze had no reason to feel guilty. But Megu, unable to contain his rage, violently struck both Hiro and Shino, berating them for being so unnervingly calm about Eika's death. He demanded that they act like actual human beings and express their emotions instead of suppressing them so coldly. However, Hiro explained that it wasn't that they didn't want to grieve. Rather, they were focusing all their energy on destroying the tree. If it wasn't eliminated, there would be no future to begin with. Worse yet, the entire world was now defending the tree, meaning they had to go against the world itself. Even so, they refused to give up not until they could read the letter Eika had left for them. Shino, after taking a heavy blow from Megu, turned to Hikaze and asked if she could heal him, as Megu might have hit him a little too hard. Seeing Shino coughing up blood, everyone panicked. Soon after, the group devised a concrete plan to destroy the heart of the first tree. With the naval forces of multiple nations gathered to protect the tree, direct access had become impossible. Furthermore, Megu was now a wanted man, meaning military vessels would open fire on him without hesitation. Even if they succeeded in destroying the tree, their actions would likely spark global warfare. To prevent this, they had to ensure the safety of all allied ships, hoping that, in return, those ships would shield them from the world's retaliation. At the same time, they had to act quickly before the tree launched a counterattack. With the plan finalized, everyone prepared for the day of the operation. That night, Hiro and Shino reminisced about their first encounter with Eika. Back then, Hiro's family had adopted Eika, and from their first meeting, Eika immediately sensed that Hiro was a peculiar person. Shino, too, was just as strange for being able to tolerate someone like Hiro. What should have been an awkward and cautious first meeting instead felt natural and comfortable, as if the three had always known each other. Meanwhile, Salmon and Yamamoto were astonished by how much Hiro had changed. Hiro declared that if they were condemned and war broke out after the tree's destruction, he would take full responsibility. Since it was Eika's actions that had led to this situation, he, as her family, would bear the consequences. Thanks to Shino standing by his side, Hiro had the courage to move forward. Likewise, without Hiro, Shino wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. Though still just high school students, the two of them now carried the fate of the entire world on their shoulders. A few days later, Salmon briefed Takumi on the mission. Both of them acknowledged that if they failed, they wouldn't just lose the battle, they wouldn't survive at all. Megu, before the mission, had asked Hiro to deliver a letter to his ex-girlfriend in case he didn't make it back. But Hiro, without hesitation, tore the letter apart, stating that if Megu died, the entire world would be doomed anyway. Megu, however, feared that he might have to make the ultimate sacrifice to ensure the tree's complete destruction, just like in the movies. Hiro dismissed the idea, telling him to focus on training and getting stronger instead. Later, Hiro and Shino approached Yamamoto, informing her that they wanted to join the assault team alongside Megu. Yamamoto warned them that the more people they had, the easier it would be to attract attention. Hiro assured her that he had a plan to handle that. Even so, Yamamoto bluntly stated her concern that the two of them might become a liability. Hiro and Shino both accepted the risk, willing to be left behind if they proved to be a hindrance. Seeing their determination, Yamamoto had no choice but to let them come along. Yamamoto then reported this to Sumura and Tetsuma. Neither of them expected that Yamamoto, who had initially opposed letting the two boys join, would now be their strongest supporter. Meanwhile, Junichiro gave Shino some advice on what to prepare for the trip, but Shino refused to carry too much, frustrating Hakazi, who was exasperated that he was heading into a life-or-death battle without proper preparation. Later, they reunited with Yamamoto's group, where all three were dressed in vacation outfits. They then reviewed their plan. They would split into two groups, one to attack the patrol ships surrounding the tree, and the other, led by Megu, to approach the tree from underwater. Hiro requested to swap positions with Sumura, wanting Sumura to remain outside to support Salmon while he himself infiltrated the interior instead. Hiro then gathered the attack team for further discussions. After the meeting, Shino asked Yamamoto if she had seen Hakazi. She directed him to the pool, where Shino found Hakazi visibly upset. She was angry that, despite knowing how much she loved him, Shino was still throwing himself into such a dangerous mission. However, Shino explained that thanks to Hakazi, he had finally let go of his lingering burdens regarding Eika. Now, Hakazi and everyone else were just as important to him, and he couldn't stand by while they marched into battle without him. He managed to convince Hakazi, but she firmly warned that if he became a liability, she would not be able to help him. The next morning, Hiro advised Megu to eat more. Megu lamented that if someone else had this power, things might be much easier. However, Hiro argued that if someone else possessed this power, the casualties would be much greater, as their entire plan had been designed to ensure that Megu wouldn't have to kill anyone. Right now, Megu was the only one capable of saving everyone. Hiro admitted that he might not be of much help at the moment, but he promised that in the next 30 years, he would transform the world into a place that no longer needed magic. He urged Megu not to worry too much, and instead give it his all, assuring him that he would keep him in check whenever necessary. Hakazi was then equipped with Megu's armor and appeared before the patrol ships. As soon as they received word that the Witch of the Tree of Ruin had surfaced, all attention immediately focused on Hakazi. Meanwhile, Megu disguised himself as Hakazi to assist the patrol fleet in battle. The reason for this role swap was simple. Their mission was primarily to stall for time. It was better to make someone with superior defensive abilities, like Hakazi, the primary target. Once she lured the fleet to a location where Salmon's group could cast their spell, her task would be complete. Megu, on the other hand, had to convincingly act as if he were stopping Hakazi from reaching the fleet, while Hakazi pretended to be fleeing in search of an opening to strike back. Meanwhile, the 3 scout ships closest to the tree were infiltrated by the 2 boys and Junichiro, who forced the crew to evacuate by threatening that bombs had already been planted on board. With this, it was time for the next phase. Megu was swiftly withdrawn from his role. allowing Tetsuma to take over. However, during the process, one of the crew members suddenly pulled out a gun and fired directly at Shino before he could react, hitting him. At the same time, Megu finally reached the tree, while Hikaze noticed that the ship the boys had hijacked had exploded, causing her some concern. However, she had promised Shino that she wouldn't worry excessively about him, so she focused on her mission. Salmon and Sumire had already attached several enchanted daggers to the ships in preparation for their spell. Fortunately, Shino had only been shot in the arm. Hiro was forced to detonate a bomb as a warning, but everything now depended on Megu. Megu successfully blasted a hole into the tree, but it quickly regenerated and began producing strange fruit to attack him. He unleashed a barrage of gunfire to destroy both the tree and the fruit, but the tree continued to regenerate, creating more obstacles to impede him. Meanwhile, Salmon cast a protective spell over the patrol ships, urging them to retreat from the tree's vicinity immediately. Everyone struggled to protect the patrol ships, preventing any from being damaged as they held on until Megu could destroy the tree. However, the odds of Megu winning seemed non-existent. He was swallowed into the water by the tree, and Shino felt that they were still missing something. Both of them recalled Aika's words. She had once said that when they felt like something was missing, they should think of the first light. At that moment, the second sacred tree on the mountain, which had appeared dormant, suddenly awakened. It transformed into a sword and then vanished into a black hole in the sky. Just as Megu was convinced he had disappointed everyone, a sudden light shone through, and the sword re-emerged from beneath the ocean. Now able to wield the sword, Megu finally understood what needed to be done. He saw this as both an ending and a new beginning. He then plunged the sword into the tree's trunk, completely erasing it. With that, magic disappeared entirely from the world. From now on, the future would be the story of each individual in this new world. A month passed, and Yamamoto noticed that crime rates were already rising again. Salmon pointed out that this was simply how things were before the tree had appeared. Yamamoto and Takumi negotiated with the government to help find stable jobs for the members of Hikaze's family, now that magic was gone. Meanwhile, Tetsuma was forced into working as Takumi's chauffeur, much to his dismay. Hikaze, on the other hand, wanted to escape her village and move to the city, but the two elderly women warned her that she was incapable of cooking or doing household chores, meaning she wouldn't survive on her own like she had when she still had magic. Since neither Takumi nor Tetsuma were willing to help her, she decided to leave on her own, taking public transport. Later, Yamamoto and Salmon visited Megu, Sumire, and Junikairo, who were cleaning up their room before bidding it farewell for the last time. Just then, Megu received an unexpected message from his ex-girlfriend, and he hoped that he would get the chance to rekindle their relationship. Yamamoto also wished that she herself would find love someday. Meanwhile, Shino and Hiro were now studying for university. Shino took out the message that Aika had left for the two of them, and Hiro, suddenly remembering it, rushed over to watch it with him. In the video, Aika first congratulated them on defeating the first sacred tree. She also warned them about the potential risks that lay ahead, but that wasn't the only reason for her message. First, she wanted to thank Shino for giving her the happiest days of her life. He had given her someone she could trust. She also expressed her gratitude to Hiro for treating her like a true younger sister, always worrying and caring for her, even when it wasn't necessary. Aika believed she had fulfilled her role in creating a beautiful ending, so she hoped that neither of them would mourn her for too long. Instead, she wanted them to find their own happiness and live fulfilling lives. In the end, she had no regrets about the choice she had made. Afterward, the two visited Aika's grave, where Hiro, for the first time, voiced the feelings he had kept bottled up for so long. He declared that even if Shino got a new girlfriend, he would always remain Aika's older brother. From now on, he would no longer live under anyone else's expectations. He would write his own story and determine his own ending. With Aika's permission from the message, Hiro then punched Shino before announcing that he would now live life on his own terms. Shino had nothing left to say to Aika. Hiro had already spoken for him. The two then left together, each heading toward their own path. And with that, the story came to an end.